record.
So you've got me as a panelist, correct?
Yes, yeah. So I can give you. You need. What we'll do. Everybody's muted, and I'll record it with a speaker view, so only you and whoever's speaking will be the main view. You need control of the screen for anything?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give you that. Let me switch view here first.
I need complete swatantriya.
Yes, okay. Let me do that here. Switch to, I think it has to be in speaker view in order to get a good recording. Participants. I've made you the host.
Okay. Do you tell me when we should
So
start?
George, I'm going to record, but you'll have to give me, because now you're the host, you'll have to give me permission to record.
Okay, let me see if I can allow recording.
Okay, let me open this a brief. Om Stapakaya Chidadamasya Sarvadharma Sarupine Avatara Varishtai Ramakrishnayate Namaha Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatkurum Para Padme Tayostritva Pranamami Muhur Muhur Badrakali Namo Nityam Saraswatye Namo Namaha Veda Viranga Vedanta Vijjastana Evasha Sri Ganesha Sharada Guru Vyo Namaha. So very happy to continue our Devi Gita classes. This will be our last class for at least a month, as Swami Ambika and myself will be traveling. So this is a really nice special class. Last week we read 2 verses. We were on chapter 2 of the Devi Bhagavatam, and we read the last 2, verse 9 and 10, where the Divine Mother is describing various views of Maya. And the topic being discussed is why ontological topics of like, why is there something instead of nothing? Why is there many things instead of one thing? And if there's many things, what are those many things? What is this Jeev Jagat? Are they real? What are they? So this is the topics being discussed. And she describes a list of all kinds of views of Maya. The Maya is this, Maya is austerity, Maya is knowledge, Maya is darkness, Maya is inert, Maya is all kinds of nature, is prakriti, is all kinds of things. And then she kind of stops by mentioning 2 main schools, or 2 very different ways of looking at Maya, of the one becoming many. And she mentions that those who are experts in the Shaivite-śāstra, the scripture, the Shaivite scriptures, describe her. Actually, the translation uses it, meaning Maya, but actually the term is her. Those describe her as Vimarśa, and those who study the essence of the Vedas, the Vedantis, describe it as ignorance, as powerful ignorance, or all-pervading ignorance, avidya, right? So those are 2 very distinct definitions, ignorance and Vimarśa. And last week, with my own very limited knowledge of both Vedanta and Tantra, Shaivite Tantra, we gave a kind of a introductory way to grasp these 2 main ideas. But I was unsatisfied, and because of the sophistication of the Shaivite tantric view is so sophisticated, and the Vedic view has been well presented by so many teachers for the last 100 years, right? So if you need more clarification of that, that's available online and through so many lectures and texts. But I think the Shaivite, especially the Kashmir Shaivite system, which I think this verse is commenting on, it says the Shaivite, those Shaivite Shastras that describe it as Vimarśa. That not every Shaivite school describes it as Vimarśa. This is the monistic Shaivism of Kashmir that describes Maya as Vimarśa. That's a specialty, one of the specialties of the school, as far as I understand. But what I understand of it comes from George, right? Our speaker today, our guest, and he's a disciple of Swami Lakshmanjoo. Many of you have heard of him. We've mentioned him many, many times here, and he was you could say maybe the last, maybe not the final, but the most recent great master of Kashmir Shaivism, a great unprecedented scholar, unchallengeable scholar, but as also a realized saint, or maybe even more. And the reason Kali Mandir is aligned to Kashmir Shaivism is because Usha in 1991, I think, is when Swamiji came, 1991, 92, something. Swamiji came to America, or I think only one time towards the end of his life. And Usha met him and she was visiting him every weekend for about 3 months when he was here in Los Angeles. And that's when she met George. So Usha's known George for 32, 33 years. I met George when I met Usha. I just met Swami Lakshmanjoo. It's my great misfortune, right? I met Usha 31 years ago. So I think she was on fire telling me stories, Swami Lakshmanjoo, when I first met Usha, the saints that she's met, and this is the most recent. And she says one of her details, she says that we read in the Gospels for Ramakrishna somebody in ecstasy, what ecstasy looks like, right? But she's never seen it until she saw Swami Lakshmanjoo dancing in ecstasy. And she said now she saw what it looked like, in real life, not just in a book, what it described, a real ecstatic personality. So George has been was Swamiji's attendant, and he has spent many years through the Kashmir now it's the Lakshmanjoo Academy. Started as a Universal Shaivite Fellowship, bringing out with John Denise Hughes and the association there, bringing out very authentic commentaries of the scriptures by Swami Lakshmanjoo. Work that will be the basis of scholarship and sadhana for hundreds of thousands, maybe thousands of years. This work that they're doing, it's really impressive and incredible. And he's at Swami Lakshmanjoo's ashram now in Srinagar, right? And Swami Ambika and myself will be joining him shortly in a few days, next couple of weeks. About 2 weeks, I think, we'll be there. So we're very excited. So George, our topic is Vimarśa, and how you want to present it and help us understand this as a different and sophisticated, maybe even an alternate way of understanding the phenomenon of Maya and Jeev Jagat.
Okay, I'll share my screen. I'll start also with a mantra that Swamiji gave before he left this world. And this is a mantra to the Agora Shaktis. Nothing to do with Agoris in India, but the Agora Shakti, the three main Devis of the whole of creation, which come out of the state of Shiva. These are the essence of Vimarśa Shakti. So let me share my screen and make sure we're on the same page here. Okay, I can get rid of that. And tell me when you can see that.
We can see it.
Okay, so I'll recite this this mantra, and okay. Om Agorebhyo Tagorebhyo Gora Gora Taribhyascha Sarvata Sharva Sarvebhyo Namaste Rudra Urupebhya Agorebhyo Tagorebhyo Gora Gora Taribhyascha Sarvata Sharva Sarvebhyo Namaste Rudra Urupebhya Agorebhyo Tagorebhyo Gora Gora Taribhyascha Sarvata Sharva Sarvebhyo Namaste Rudra Urupebhya. O Lord Shiva, you alone transform yourself into all forms, into the forms of the powers of Rudra as Agora, the enlightening and uplifting energy, Goratari, the frightening, darkening energy which pushes one down, and Gora, the energy which keeps one fixed, neither rising or falling. These forms, embodied in Rudra Shiva, are helpful to aspirants while they are aware, and frightful for the ones who are ignorant, pushing them down and down. It just comes to mind, there's a beautiful verse on Kali in the form of Chanda. Mahagoreshvari Chanda Srishti Samhara Karika Trivaham Trividam Trishtam Balat Kalam Prakashati. I won't go into any thing on that. We'll get with our topic here, which is the verse which Swami Bhajanananda sent to me, and this is the verse in question. Vimarśa iti tam prāhuḥ śaiva-śāstra-viśāradāḥ avidyāmitare prāhur-veda-tattvārtha-cintakāḥ. So those verses in Shaiva scriptures for Shaivites declare her to be Vimarśa, reflective awareness, while those who contemplate the doctrines of the Vedas, Vedantins, and that's a very wide class of philosophy, declare her to be powerful avidya, or ignorance. Now, in Kashmir Shaivism, the way Vimarśa is explained is, first you have to understand that in Kashmir Shaivism, the reason that they've gone into minute detail about this mechanics of how creation came out is they've discovered, or they've looked under the magnifying glass, and they've found that above Purusha, which is the 25th tattva, and considered to be the highest tattva in most other systems, but they discovered another 11 tattvas. And this has been there since the beginning of the literature, the tantras and the agamas of Shaivism. So I thought it would be nice to show this in chart formation, where you have at the highest level the state of Paramashiva, 5 universal energies. And in Kashmir Shaivism, there's always this state of 5, the pentat of 5 energies, 5 pranas, 5 dhatus, 5 mahabhutas. It goes all the way, but the source of all of those groups of 5 comes out of the state of Paramashiva. And Paramashiva is Chit Shakti, consciousness, Ananda Shakti, bliss, Icha Shakti, will, Jnana Shakti, all knowledge, and Kriya Shakti, all action. But those 5 things are in a state of total oneness. There's not, one isn't higher than the other. They're all submerged in this great ocean of the consciousness of Paramashiva. And what happens in that is that something stirs within that ocean and rises up and looks back at itself. And that is the Vimarśa Shakti. That is the reflective awareness in which Shiva rises up through Shakti. Now we're talking about, that they're inseparable, but here there seems to be a separation, but there isn't. And once that Vimarśa rises up, then you get a slight lessening and you come to the 5 pure, or called Shuddha Tattvas. So this now becomes Shiva, Shakti, Sadashiva, Ishvara, and Shuddha Vidya. And each one of these has the same all-pervading qualities, but one is predominant. In Shiva, consciousness is predominant. In Shakti, bliss is predominant. In Sadashiva, will or Icha Shakti is predominant. In Ishvara, the 33rd tattva, knowledge is predominant, and the other 4 are all there, but in a subsided or a subordinate form, and Shuddha Vidya is Kriya Shakti. So what happens? These are pure states, and in Kashmir Shaivism, these 3 especially are the state of creation, protection, and destruction. Shakti and Shiva take a really specific role of grace and hiding grace, or it's called, anugraha and tirodhana, or laya, like how have we gotten hidden in the world? And in terms of this verse, what has happened, in order for Shiva and Shakti to want to come down into the universe, there has to be some kind of magic, because an ocean can't become a drop. We're all the drops. We have Ma, we have Shiva, we have Shakti. They're all one and the same. We have them all in our heart, expressing themselves through our life. But our life, if we don't feel that universality, we're in the state of jiva. So Maya plays an important role here. Maya is just the mirror which reflects these 5 pure energies to come down. So And this is where Vimarśa is becoming more and more concrete. This reflective awareness, reflecting upon ourself, or Shiva reflecting upon himself. First, there's a stepping down slightly to Sada, Shiva, Ishvara, and Shuddha Vidya. But once Maya comes into the field, then all of the tattvas below that, and remember, I'm showing here that Purusha, the 25th tattva, is the highest of most other systems. These 11 tattvas are unique to Kashmir Shaivism. You won't find them you'll find them in some other texts that have gleaned things many thousands of years ago from the Shaiva-śāstras of Kashmir. But you'll rarely have any talk about kanchukas, which means coverings. And how this happens, I'm just going to go right down to the bottom of this chart to show that these 5 pure, super pure energies of Paramashiva reflect through Swatantra Shakti, which is Maya. Swatantra Shakti and Maya are one and the same thing. Only Maya is always moving downwards into the world, and Swatantra Shakti can move both ways. Okay, so what happens is this reflection in the mirror. When you look in a mirror, your right ear becomes your left ear. The image in the mirror is reversed. And this is exactly what happens in the state of Shiva and Shakti willing themselves to come through Maya and into the world and limit themselves so that they can play in the world. So this all-pervading consciousness now becomes Nityata, or Chit Shakti becomes Nityata, limited space. We live in limited space and time. The all bliss, which is Nityata, the Sanskrit word to describe the aspects of these states is Vyapakata, all pervading, becoming limited space. Nityata, eternal, becoming limited time, Kala. Purnatva, fullness of Icha Shakti, becoming limited attachment, Raga. All knowledge, which is Sarvagyatra, becoming Vidya, limited knowledge. And Kriya, Sarvakatritva, all action, because in the state of Shiva and Shakti, the universe is in universal action. But going through the state of Maya with the help of Swatantra Shakti and the condensing of this Vimarśa Shakti, this reflective awareness on the state of our own I-ness, we come down to the state of limited action. But you have to remember that the I-ness is always there in the background. And we don't reflect on the all-pervadingness of our I-ness, but wherever you are right now, you say, I'm here. And wherever you were yesterday, you say, I was there. And no matter where you were, the I aspect of your own life is always pervading. So in Kashmir Shaivism, it's very important to understand that when Shiva and Shakti decided within themselves to come down into the world through this Maya Shakti, they didn't separate themselves. In Kashmir Shaivism, Maya Shakti is also known as Yoni Bila. And everybody knows what the term Yoni means. It's where we take birth and we're thrown out into the world. The difference is, in a human birth, we're separated, we're severed from our mother. But in the universal state, Shiva and Shakti only appear to be separated because that's the play. They lose themselves within us, within our life, and we live in a limited world. And it is for play in Kashmir Shaivism. In the best way that I could describe this question came up a real lot in one of our meetings, was for us to understand that this Prakash and Vimarsh, Shiva and Shakti, the energies within Paramashiva, which became Shiva and Shakti, the tattvas of 36th and 35th, consciousness and bliss, has flown down through the world, and this we could say this umbilical cord, universal umbilical cord, which has gone through Maya, has got to the level of producing us as Purusha and Prakriti. I'm not saying this is not a separation of male and female. This is just to know that we live in the world at the level of Purusha, the limited jiva, and we're played by Prakriti. And whereas Shiva and Shakti's universe is the universe itself, it's the totality of everything. For us, the totality of our everything is everything that we've done and known in our own limited space and time. But there's no separation. And prana, actually the word here should be pranana shakti. Pranana, the energy of breath, is what has flown out from Shiva and Shakti. And from a point, we breathe in prana, which in our bodies becomes the 5 pranas, and that's our life. So life force is called pranana shakti, and we draw that from the time we take our first breath until the time we leave this world. And so in Kashmir Shaivism, one has to understand that Maya, who has created this illusion that we're limited inside of our own world, Maya is just the energy of Shiva and Shakti together to limit themselves down to the level of just what we say, Pashu Baba, limited individual, or we call ourselves beast. You know, Shiva is also known as Pashupati, the father of beasts. But there's no separation there. And anybody on the spiritual path, what has happened to them, anybody who joins any spiritual path, something has happened inside of you where Shiva and Shakti, in the form of whatever, Ma, has woken up. And now you're possessed with this idea, I must know what's going on. And that takes the form of reading a book, doing yoga, changing my diet, whatever it is. All of these are steps towards just understanding our own nature, our own self. And that's the role of Maya, to keep us down in the world. And the Swatantra Shakti, the energy of Maya which can lift us up, is that energy which reveals to us our own nature. It reveals our own self. And Swamiji was very attracted to Usha because in Kashmir Shaivism, Kali takes a very, very important role. In Kashmir Shaivism, she's called Mahabhairava Gora Ugra Chanda Kali. She has all those names, but in essence, she's Kalasan Karshani Kali. She's the essence of Lord Shiva that draws all time and space into herself. And that's why you have the depiction of Kali dancing on Shiva. Shiva has nothing else to do then. Like I said, here in these tattvas, Shiva is all space and time, Vyapakata, all pervading. And Kali, Ananda Shakti, bliss, is Nityata. She's eternal time. And she throws out time into the world, so we become limited in time. That was the verse that I recited. Mahagoreshvari Chanda, Shrishti Samhara Karika, Trivaham, Trividam, Trishtam. Trishtam means she's all 3 aspects of time, past, present, and future. And that's where we're caught, in this 24-hour cycle. But the more you meditate, and by your own grace, when you go into deeper states of meditation, time takes on a whole different meaning paradigm. And that's Ma, in charge of time, opening up within us to show us that, you know, this 24 hours is really limited. There's a whole other realm of time that stretches out and out and out to universal time, Nityatva. I think I have one more chart here. Oh, no, that was it. This is Swami Lakshmanjoo. This was his master, Swami Mahatapkar. That's the painting that Claudia is doing. And this was his Paramaguru, Swami Rama. So I can probably stop sharing the screen here and hope we haven't gone over time. Oh, there's Swami Ambikananda. He's already at the Ganges. Okay, good. So that's the essence of what Maya is about in Kashmir Shaivism in a nutshell. And I went through those verses, and there was there was a few of the verses mentioned Chaitanya, and about 850.
George,
You know.
can you
Yeah.
put your video back on? We can't see you.
Okay, nothing to see there. Okay, let me see. There I am.
There you are. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'm actually talking. It's not a recording. Okay, the drivers are still intact. Good. They've kept their. Oh yes, I forgot that was terrible of me to show visuals while they're driving. But this is recorded, and you send it out to people anyway. I think Claudia definitely wanted a recording. So what I've tried to do is just give you an understanding of Maya from the Shaiva point of view. And I was just saying that about 11 kilometers from here, and if we have time, we'll do that. We'll go and sit on Shiva Rock. There's a rock here, which is about as big as a house, where more than 1,000 years ago, Lord Shiva appeared to one of his sincere devotees. And the devotee was perturbed because the Shaiva philosophy was disintegrating. It was just disappearing very quickly. And Shiva said, don't worry, go to the stream. There's a rock there, and on that rock I've inscribed my Shiva Sutras. This is what Shiva told him. And he went there and he found this big rock, but he couldn't see anything written on it. And he was kind of dejected, and he just leaned on the rock thinking, you know, oh, well, I wonder, maybe the dream wasn't real. And as soon as he touched the rock, this whole rock just turned up like that. And underneath were inscribed the Shiva Sutras. And he memorized them, you know, in those days he memorized them, and he produced them in a book called the Shiva Sutras, and then he wrote 2 commentaries, or he wrote a commentary on that called Spandakarikas. So the first sutra that Shiva gave was Chaitanya Mahatma. Everything is made of consciousness. And the second sutra was Jnanam Bandha, which is where the whole idea about ignorance or avidya comes in. Jnanam Bandha can be seen 2 ways. Our limited knowledge which we have in the world binds us. And not knowing unlimitedly also binds us. So having limited knowledge, which is everything we've learned since we were kids, you know, A for apple, B for ball, C for cat, you know, everything we've learned, we now have superimposed in the background of our awareness, and we no longer see things for what they are. We see things and we name them. Children up to that age of learning that, they see things in the most pure way. There's no differentiation for young children before they learn to speak and articulate, especially for elevated children. And they, you know, they can continue this even when they're learning. But once we imbibe ourselves with the idea of limited knowledge, we think we know everything. We read a book and we go, wow, I really know that. Oh, Kashmir Shaivism, yeah, I've done that. I read a book on that. Now I'll do Vedanta, or now I'll do Karma Mimamsa. Yeah, I read that, I've done that. But actually that knowledge is always changing and always fragmented. And it always shifts, because you always find there's something new to learn. When you read the Devi Bhagavatam, you can read it once, and the second time you read it, it means so much more. The third time, again, you're just finding all of these gems coming out. And that knowledge is moving you towards, it's expanding your awareness to a state where you realize that, hold on, there's a state of universal knowledge where I could know everything. And that's when you go beyond vikalpa. That's when you no longer think thoughts, so you no longer think in differentiated, in the way of differentiated perception. It's where your perception changes and you see the underlying reality of everything, which is the Vimarśa Shakti, you know, the energy behind all knowledge. So I don't think I could say much more about that. The rest is up to experience. It's 8:04 a.m. here, so that means we've been going for
only a half hour. We go till here. We go hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it needs, you know. And also, I'm sure some devotees here, some of the students may have some questions. But with the kind of the more, of course, you mentioned when you say Vedanta, you mean there's many schools of thought that are underneath the term Vedanta, right?
Yes.
And Vedanta more or less being the tradition of the Upanishads and its interpretation, right? But the form of Vedanta that's been privileged in the more recent time and the Western world is probably Advaita Vedanta, right?
Yes.
And it has a view that this Maya that's identified as Vimarśa in the tantric and Shaivite system is seen as is just described as agyana, ignorance, right? And then looking at its qualities of not being eternal, being changing, not being independent.
Yes.
Shankara gives a few categories of what it means to be real, right? It does not meet the category of realness, and therefore it is not only is it the result of ignorance, right, but is also not true, right?
Yes.
And so I think, it's a profound perception and an understanding of reality, but it can percolate in some people. It percolates down into their regular thinking in a very unsatisfying way or confusing way, where now this world is unreal and nothing matters, and everything is downplayed. And so, and I know in the Indian theistic schools, or more overtly theistic schools, some of the dualistic theistic schools, they would hold that you have God, Ishvara, right? So the reality is Ishvara plus his innumerable Shaktis, his energies, right? So that it's not like Ishvara and all his energies, really energies are just the energies of ignorance that make us see something that's not there, but actually are his energies. And that, I think, is very satisfying. The devotional tradition has a very satisfying view, but it still seems to make the energies are still different from the energetic, right? So the energy is like the God's creation. We see it, it's real in a certain sense. It's God. The reality is God and his creation, but it's different than God, right? And so even this if this view is more satisfying to some of us, it's more satisfying, it still has a flaw, right? A potential flaw of making a hard distinction between God and the world, and therefore us and God, us and the world, God and us. That whole God and the world, that duality is very harsh, right? And so I think this idea of Maya being redefined, right, as being able to explain a real world, right, of course, but a changing world, not that they have to. I think we have to loosen the definition of reality to not be necessarily unchanging. So Ramakrishna would probably call it a real yet changing world, right? But how do you make that real and changing world, including us, still not really separated from God, right? Even if it exists, maybe we really exist, but how is it not separated from God? I think the Kashmiri system is giving some hint to this.
Yeah, the main what you've just described, the basis of what you've described in those traditions is neti neti. Nothing is real. Give up the world. And one of the main core differences between Kashmir Shaivism and almost all other systems is this idea of renunciation. And for centuries, that was felt in India, that as a householder, you can go to the temple, you can get the priest to do a whole bunch of pujas for you and yagyas, and that's what will bring you liberation in the end. But you're outside of that. That's way above your pay grade, and you just have to be at the mercy of the system. And that's why the whole renunciate tradition has been so respected in India and revered. And Kashmir Shaivism fell into that thing Kashmir Shaivism in this particular era, in the beginning of Kali Yuga, started 5,000 years ago. And Durvasa Rishi, who was Krishna's guru, or one of Krishna's gurus, Durvasa Rishi, he was given the charge by Lord Shiva to be the custodian of Shaivism in its three forms: the monistic Shaivism, mono-dualistic Shaivism, and the dual. So it's the Shaiva Tantras, the Shaiva Agamas, and various texts, and the Shaiva, like Puranas, because Shaiva. But in the beginning, he couldn't find any students. He couldn't find anybody that he could give this knowledge to. So he had to create mind-born children, Triambakanatha, Amardakanatha, and Srinatha, to handle each of these different systems. And then Triambakanatha, he also couldn't find anybody capable. So he created a mind-born son, and he created a mind-born daughter, very important. He created Ardha Triambaka, half, Ardha, half of Triambaka. And she was given the purest, highest tradition. And that tradition still exists today, Swamiji said, but very secretly. And this went down for 15 generations of mind-born, children. And then somewhere along that way, it got lost. It went underground. And the Pancharata system, the Vaishnava system, became very prominent in Kashmir, and you couldn't evolve without going to the temple and doing rituals. And Vasugupta, the one I talked about before, the Shiva Sutras, he said, no, this feels wrong. Chaitanya, consciousness is everywhere. I should be able to get enlightened or Jivan Mukta in my home. And he prayed to Shiva, and Shiva came back and said, okay, let's put the train back on the tracks. I'll give you the Shiva Sutras. And that was the start of what was called Kashmir Shaivism. And Kashmir Shaivism became predominantly a householder tradition. There was no restriction. You didn't have to renounce. There was no neti. The world, as we pointed out, that was created by Shiva and Shakti and them coming down into the world was designed as a commentary of God consciousness, how God consciousness has flown into the world. That's pretty hard to take when you're in a traumatic situation. A person dies around you, or you've lost your house is burnt down in the Malibu fires. What to do. But actually, the truth is the first experience. Swami Lakshmanjoo tells us the first experience that happens when a yogi or a yogini achieves the state of moksha, Jivan Mukta. The first realization is that it was always there. And the second realization is everything up to that point in this lifetime. And the memory comes, he said, of at least the clear memory comes of the last 3 lifetimes. Everything was perfect. Everything was leading up to this point. The trauma, the happiness, the joy, the sadness, as the Gita says, the dvesha, advesha, kama, krodh, lobh, greed and this krodha, anger, all of those emotions are there within us. So that's our internal world, but they're not separated from God consciousness. If we keep trying to separate those things, then we're on a path of I can do this if I just clean up my act. If I just start jogging, I'm going to be much better or whatever. And Swamiji says that the real essence is surrender. If you surrender to Ma, if you surrender to Shiva, if you surrender to whoever then everything will start to unfold in front of you automatically. But it has to be real surrender, not 50%. Surrender with conditions doesn't work. I'm going to surrender, but I want this. These are the first 5, rewards I want from my total surrender. That's not total surrender. Anyway, so I think the main difference is this idea of renouncing the world as opposed to enjoying the world. Now, this is a very important point. Enjoying the world with awareness, not just saying, okay, everything is Shiva. I can do whatever I want, no problem. I can be good. I can be bad. I'm not going to be responsible for my actions. As long as you feel that you're acting, as long as you feel that there's differentiation between me and other bodies, you're responsible for every action that you do. But the grace keeps unfolding. And the ultimate thing in Kashmir Shaivism is, because nowadays everybody wants a guru. But Swami Lakshmanjoo would say the ultimate guru is within yourself. And the ultimate guru is that part of yourself which decides that what I'm saying is correct or doesn't make sense. Or what Swami Bhajanananda says, well, that makes sense, but I'm not sure about this. How do you know you're not sure about that? That's the guru in you continually directing you on your own spiritual path that is completely in line with what is right for you at that time. And that continually changes. It's called tarka in Sanskrit. It's called your own transcendental logic. And we have it all the time. It's there. It's attached to our intellect, and it's attached to the term, ritambara pragyan or pratibha, that flash of intuition that we always get when we know something's right or something's wrong. That's the guru. And that is basically, Ma or Shiva or Shakti, whichever way you see it, opening up in your heart and expanding the space and time in which you're living, and softening the hard edges of your life. This is Kashmir Shaivism, and I have such a long relation. When you were talking about the old times with Usha, when Usha lived in a flat in Laguna Beach, and Ma had arrived, she had to go to India for 2 weeks, and she phoned me up, said, "George, could you come and look after Ma for 2 weeks?" I said, "Sure, Usha, that's fine." So I went to her flat. The unfortunate thing in that flat, there was nowhere where you could sit with your legs outstretched, because there was a picture, there was a picture every half an inch apart on the walls. So everywhere you were sitting, your feet were pointing towards a deity. So I called Usha and said, "How do I sleep? I sleep standing up? What do I do?" And she said, "Oh, if you look at the bedroom, it's fine." That was a wonderful time. That's when I met Swami Bhajanananda at the Hare Krishna restaurant. So I have a long association with Usha and with Kali Ma and all of the Kali kids from those days, and we've had great fun with our havans when Swami Bhajanananda and Ambikananda and a few other devotees would come for Swamiji's Mahasamadhi and perform the havans, and very joyous time in those the 90s and early 2000s. I moved a little bit away from the theme. Any people have questions that I would attempt?
I want to ask one more question, just because either things
Yes.
that are common. I've heard this as a critique to the Kashmir system, right? And from many years ago, but it never left my mind as a one of the critiques that is sometimes given. And I think I've even discussed it with you many years ago, and I don't exactly remember the clearest point of your answer. I remember the gist of your answer, but is that, it's like in there's I think 3 Upanishads that have this term. What is it? Bahusham praja yayati, or something like, I am one that let me become many. He desired to become many, or to be born and start the process of creation. How the one starts the process of creation, and that in order to make sense of this, you have to ascribe a sankalpa, right, desire, to Brahman, or to the absolute. In our system, maybe Paramashiva, but in the Vedantic system, Brahman, right? And some people say that is attributing something that Brahman can't have. He cannot have a second. He cannot have. There's nothing second for it to cause desire, right? Nothing for nothing. So, and I know part of I think I remember your point is it all hinges on this Svatantriya idea, or this that as a way of justifying. I think, if I remember, we can opportunity to elucidate. I think you use the example of a child playing. If a child plays, it plays out of its own nature, not necessarily because it's lacking something or there's another, right? And somehow to justify that, but it seems to be an important point that goes to the one of. I mean, there's the systems. The scholars and experts of the systems have nuanced the distinctions and their arguments a little bit better. But I remember this is one of the ones that it's an easy zinger. People say that and they think, oh, we've defeated the system or something like that. But it can't. It seems too cheap of a hit, right? That seems to be more nuance in that. If you can describe how, if Shiva does the Paramashiva in his 5-fold aspect, then becomes the 5 pure aspects of that cascading down into creation as us and everything. Why does and why can and why would he do this? is the question, and still be the absolute and one without a second.
The question, the real question is Shiva, is there some sense of incompleteness in which he has to come out of that state in order to get complete again? You know, this is like a shrinking down. But Kashmir Shaivism describes it in a very different way, in that in the state of Paramashiva, when Vimarśa starts to move, the bliss, the intense bliss of that recognition of universal I-ness is so overwhelming, it spills over. It just spills over into the world. It isn't that Shiva had to, there was no way to contain the intensity of that bliss, which is it's like stirring the ocean into these mammoth waves. And they had to crash, and it's a clashing. It's, you know, it's called a Sangata between Shiva and Shakti, or a Yamala. This is the divine union where Shiva and Shakti realize their universality, and it's so intensely blissful, it spills out. Now, the second point there is that then people ask the question, but okay, it spills out into Shiva Tattva, I can accept. Shakti Tattva, what about Icha Tattva? Icha, which is related to the state of Sadashiva. What about Icha? Icha means will. So why at that universal level would Shiva have desire? Because will is roughly translated, or literally translated as desire. And Swamiji was amazing in his knowledge of things of the Western world sometimes. He said, it's like this, and there was a married couple there. He says, when you got married, he said, you desired your wife, is that correct? They said, yes, yes. He said, but what happened when you went to the church? What did the priest say? He said, do you accept this woman as your, you know, lawfully wedded wife? And do you accept this man as your lawfully wedded husband? I mean, lawfully, sorry, slip of the tongue. Now, Swamiji said that word acceptance in Sanskrit is called abhyubhagama. And Abhinavagupta has said that Icha Shakti, the first impulse of Shiva and Shakti to come out of themselves, is not by any desire or will, it's an acceptance. It's an acceptance of their own universality to flow down into the world for the sake of play, like you said, a young kid. So the idea that there was something lacking, but within that, and in that chart, which I'll share with you, I'll send you a copy of that chart. You can share that chart with anybody. In that, I didn't go into detail, but the state of Shuddha-vidya, Ishvara, and Sadashiva, there is a limiting factor called Anavamala. Anavamala, the prime mala, or the prime mala means dirt, but it also means limitation. The prime limitation, because what they said was that in order for Shiva and Shakti to move down in the world, the only way they can do it is to have this will, but their desires now have to become limited, looking in the opposite direction of Shiva and Shakti. They have to start looking into the world. So the moment there's a shrinking down and a feeling of limitation within Sadashiva, the next thing that happens is Sadashiva goes, oh, I have to fill this gap. I have to fill this. I feel this limitation. Sadashiva could turn around and go straight back to Shiva and Shakti and go, no, I'm full. I don't have to go anywhere. But what happens through this play of moving down, this Jnana Shakti comes up, and this knowledge comes of how I can fulfill this desire. Oh, I can fulfill this if I do this. But doing hasn't happened yet. So Kriya Shakti has to come into play, that I can act and I can do that. And then you move through Maya, and you find that you're forever trying to fill up yourself. You're forever trying to expand your limited boundaries. You're forever trying to beat time. You're forever getting attached to things, because the little things in the world seem that if I just have a new car, I'm going to be completely fulfilled. And after you have the new car for 6 months, it's the same as your old car, you know. And these what Swamiji calls imitations of bliss. Imitations of bliss are the mechanics of how Shiva and Shakti keep themselves in the world. And he says the greatest imitation of bliss is sex. And if it wasn't, there'd be nobody here today, right? If it wasn't the #1 sport on the planet would have half its population, and Bill Gates would be happy, you know. So sorry about that. Don't go into politics. So this idea of a sense of lacking, a sense of incompleteness, is just there for the sake of moving in the opposite direction of God consciousness, moving out of God consciousness. And that Ramana Maharshi, the great saint of South India, he said a beautiful thing. He said, Shiva and Shakti live in you as you. Okay, how nice is that? Your life is complete in whichever way it is. They live in you as you. And we all have this grandiose idea. I know when I first started meditating when I was 18 years old, I got the idea of enlightenment. I thought, oh, one day I'm going to be this enlightened being with light shining out of every pore in my body, and you know, I'm going to have thousands of disciples, and I'll be like Maharishi or something. All these illusions of grandeur. But Ramana Maharshi says, no, hold on a second. You were already Shiva before you had all those ideas. Just be in a state of being instead of becoming. But we're always becoming. We can't help it. It's just the nature of these Aghoratari Shaktis who push us into the world. Maya keeps playing us into the world, but it's not an illusion. It's the play of Shiva and Shakti to keep themselves limited in our lives, in our limited lives, but to play and open up within each of us this idea that, hold on, I can realize my true nature. I can realize my divinity. You know, I can realize that I'm teeming with these wonderful shaktis, these wonderful energies, infinite energies, because I'm a microcosm of this whole macrocosm. It's a really beautiful concept. I mean, when I came to Kashmir after studying Vedanta and you know, all the 6 systems for a number of years, for 10 years with Maharishi and doing the Vedic science courses, and I walked into the ashram and I met Swami Lakshmanjoo for the first time. It was like this just wave of freshness that came over me. And the feeling was he didn't want to own me in any way, shape, or form. He only wanted me to realize the dignity of my own nature, my own reality. I remember walking down the road the first time when I left the ashram. I felt so full and complete, I couldn't explain it. I couldn't explain that sitting for half an hour with a master and just having a cup of tea and not much transpiring between us, although there were some great moments in that, but just having this feeling of fullness and completeness. It was quite amazing. It was quite amazing. Because his idea was, make you realize who you are. Don't be dependent on me. I'll show you the way. I'll give you the text to read. I'll tell you what suits for you. I'll give you a mantra. I'll do this. But at the end of the day, you're going to realize that all of that was they were just guides along the path. And in the end, you're going to realize, wow, I always was Shiva. And then somebody asked Swamiji, says, so Swamiji, when I get enlightened, and he said, hold on a second. Actually, so I'll tell you the truth. He said, you don't get enlightened. Because by the time you reach Jivan Mukti, you have gone, and Shiva and Shakti have now made themselves apparent to themselves. Mm-hmm. So he said, no individual gets enlightened. Only Shiva and Shakti draw themselves back out of the state of our play of ignorance, back into the pure tattvas, where they realize, yeah, we did that, and it was all perfect, and now we can enjoy our bliss again of universality. I hope that makes a bit of sense.
Very much so. Thank you. That's beautifully said. I'm sure maybe if anybody has any questions or comments, you can click yourself in, or
the Q&A.
Swamiji, if you can give some, if there's anybody. Yeah.
I've just got to go. Somebody keeps knocking on. I have a sign there which says webinar in progress. But many of the people speak Hindi who can't read that. And
okay.
Let me just see who's. Yes. Okay, no problem. Oh. Thanks, Ravinda, no problem. No, just, it's okay, it's okay, yes.
Michael, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. So when you say that, the guru in me is continually directing me in my own spiritual path, and excuse me for making it about me, does that apply only if somebody's fully surrendered, or does that apply if somebody has any type of spiritual striving or inclination, or does that apply to everyone all the time?
I would say everyone all the time. There's a beautiful chapter in a text called Tantra Loka. Now, Tantra Aloka means shedding light, and you have to understand the word Tantra means a system of knowledge. You know, if you Google Tantra, you'll get 36 million hits on the word Tantra. And if you Google tantric sex, you'll get 72 million hits, because, you know, it's a hot topic these days. But the word Tantra Aloka, Tantra Loka, which was written by this amazing Shaiva sage more than 1,000 years ago, in chapter 13, he described 27 levels of grace. 27 levels of grace, which opens up from within an individual. And they're broken up into 9 categories, but basically 3. There's very intense grace, there's medium grace, and there's inferior grace. But they're all grace. And the inferior grace is somebody goes to visit a friend, and their friend is busy, and they look in the bookshelf and there's a book on yoga, and they just grab it because they've heard the word yoga. They're not really interested, but they just browse through the book, and then they're reading, and their friend goes, "Oh, can I borrow this book?" That's grace. That's a mild, inferior level of grace, we can say, as opposed to full awakening. And now some people get the most intense level of grace and awaken in an instant. Like, let's take Eckhart Tolle, for instance. He was about to commit suicide and suddenly had this thought, who's killing who kind of thing? Who am I? And he had this epiphany, and he came out in a state with what Kashmir Shaivism would be describing as just scratching the surface of Shaktopaya, where the space around him suddenly opened up. If you heard any of the early talks of Eckhart Tolle, and I really liked his book, what was it, The Power of Now? But if you looked at those, you would find that he's always saying, can I be the space to entertain this problem? Because what he was experiencing was, from his heart, his space wasn't just contained in his body. It was now the whole room. Yogis, real yogis, some yogis have their space, which is, again, the whole ashram. And when people come into that space, they're really conversant with that people. Some yogis, elevated yogis, their space is the whole town. Others, the whole country, and others, our solar system, and others, the whole universe. Those yogis whose space from their heart is extending to the end of the universe, they have received a very intense grace to have that experience. So the grace is there, and the unfolding is there at every level. And somebody once asked Swamiji, when he was in America, we used to drive around a lot, we get stopped at the traffic lights and that. And one day somebody asked Swamiji, after he'd been here 3 months, "Swamiji, what do you think of America, and what do you think of Americans?" He said, "It's very interesting." He said, the majority of people are God-fearing people. And he said, "How so?" He said, "Well, when we're driving around and we stop at the traffic lights and I look around and I see," he says, "most of the people in their cars are in some way, shape, or form thinking about God." That was a real revelation to me, because you think everybody, especially on the 405, you think everybody's thinking about killing the car in front of them, or the person who just pulled in. But he said, no, people are thinking about God. They have a problem they're trying to solve, but their heart is directed in a direction of greater knowing. And I think that's true across the board, especially now, especially now. what's happening in the world everywhere. Does that answer that question? Michael, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I could ask many follow-up questions, but you did answer my question. Thanks.
Elijah.
Jai Jai Ma, nice to see you all. Thank you so much, George, for your brilliant presentation. It was very enlightening. I just had a question. Near the very end, you had mentioned this sort of, how to say, sort of in this state where we sort of come back to this place where within us, where we have this sort of the union of Shiva and Shakti again, right? And my sort of question is, my real question is, what happens to this world in this state, right? Because we often have the question like with Advaita, right? Like, well, if we have this non-dual realization, it's non-dual, therefore there can't be this world of duality. And I'm wondering what the relationship in Kashmir Shaivism is between the world and the absolute, sort of what happens to it? Where does it come from? Where does it go?
It doesn't go anywhere. You see yourself projected into the world and everything around you. For the enlightened yogi or yogini, and I always put that yoginis because they can get enlightened too. The enlightened yogi or yogini, what they start to feel is the space from which their heart is emanating, like the love of individuals suddenly keeps expanding out and out and out until they encompass the world, and they see this immediate connection between their own microcosm, their own body, and what's happening in the whole universe. It's not separate. What's happened is the differentiation has gone. Even that the objective world that we see around us, the brick walls and that, they become everything around them, because everything that's been manifested is manifested by Shiva and Shakti. Now they're in a state where that it's just amazing. I mean, Swami Lakshmanjoo gave examples of that. Somebody said that how does a yogi, he never talked about himself, in the first person. That wasn't the way. He would always try to remain hidden. But something happened and everybody was aware of it. One of his disciples had a problem in the US, and they were sit down writing a letter to Swamiji and about it. And the day they went to the mailbox to post a letter, they checked their own mailbox. There was a letter from Swamiji explaining everything they needed to do to solve that problem, which he must have written 7 days before. Now that person made it very public. So somebody asked Swamiji in a very clever way, Swamiji, how does a yogi do stuff like for somebody in another country, which is so physically distant? And he went the same way that they move their little finger, like that. He said the same way that they move their little finger, because that other country isn't separate from their body. They're experiencing, a really universally elevated yogi is experiencing everything happening within them, inside of them, So that makes sense. And then it's not that they put attention on everything that's happening at once, but it's very, you said it's difficult for people to understand that a yogi at that level doesn't have thoughts, doesn't have vikalpa, doesn't have sankalpa, doesn't have any desire, because they're at the level of Shiva and Shakti. So everything that's happening is perfect in the world of Shiva and Shakti. And those yogis, they usually can't wait to leave the body. They can't wait to drop their physical body and just merge it back into that ocean of consciousness from where they came out. For them, there's a beautiful YouTube clip where Swamiji says, yogis love death. They're not, sometimes because of their prāhrabdha karma, they're kept in the body. Because even yogis can't escape the prāhrabdha karma, which they've come into this world with.
Jaima. Very, very lovely answer. Actually, my mom just said she has a thought. So, so I'm gonna butcher this a little bit, but I keep thinking of two quotes as you're talking, and I believe they're both Mother Teresa. But she talks about I don't know if she says it's the irony. I found it's basically talking about that when you love so much to it hurts till the point that it hurts. There's essentially like no more hurt, only more love. And I don't know if this was her or someone else. It might be a totally different person, but it was talking about like, Lord, like break my heart to the point, and it's like so much to the point that the whole world falls in. And I was thinking about the concept as you're talking about grace and essentially what's already within and present. The tie to also openness, you know, like staying open as much as it feels like it's, you know, receiving or being given insight or a message or divine guidance. It's almost like I feel like there's a point of it that it's just a part of just staying open.
Yeah.
Open to receive and open to extend.
No, you see, everybody will approach their own spiritual path in a unique way. A way that's related to our karmas, our past experiences, the people that come into our lives, our situations. And for some people, the heart is the main point, and for others, the head. Some people really, their devotion is to intellectual knowledge, and some the intellectual knowledge is okay, but I get a bit of a headache. I go a bit cross-eyed. I'm more of a heart person, and I want to just open up my heart. And both of those are completely legitimate for those individuals. But what happens eventually on the spiritual path with true desire to find God, not to become a super intellectual or whatever, is that the heart really does open up, and this love just pours out for everything and everybody. And you can't help that, you know. You can't help that happening because it's part of the path of devotion. Now, I've been associated with Swamiji intimately for 40 years, and I've been in the ashram, and there are people here who were lifelong devotees. I found that there were two kind of devotees. There's the devotee who is devoted to their idea of devotion. Okay, and they've sorry, excuse me. I was in Delhi last week, so I still have half a Delhi in my lungs. So
Bashir.
Nechewala in office, on top of the printer. Yeah, there's two files. Bashir. TK. Sorry, this is India. Yeah, there's what I've noticed in my perception, and it's not a judgment on anybody, but there are two kinds of people that are devoted to their idea of devotion. You know, they've read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, they've seen that, Vivekananda was really devoted, but Vivekananda, if you really, he was very intellectually devoted in the beginning until Ramakrishna opened his heart, you know, and until he came to Kashmir, I went to Amarnath. And at Amarnath, he had this divine experience. But it happened before that. Before he went to Amarnath, he visited, Vivekananda actually stayed on one of the houseboats that was owned by Swami Lakshmanjoo's father. Swami Lakshmanjoo's father was the first person to build houseboats for accommodation in Kashmir in the late 1800s. And Swami Vivekananda came and stayed on one of his houseboats, went and stayed in Swamiji's house, and predicted in Swamiji's house to his parents that one day a very great soul will be born in this house. And then he went to the ashram. And when he entered the ashram, Swami Ram saw him come in, and Swami Ram, Swamiji's grandmaster, he's told the devotees, quickly recite Bhairava Stotra. And they recited these 10 verses of Bhairava Stotra. At the end of it, impromptu, Swami Vivekananda, who was, master of Sanskrit, recited a verse. And after that, Swami Ram recited a verse, which was encapsulating the whole 10 verses which have been recited previously. In Kashmir, they still recite those verses. Nobody else does. Everybody else does the 10 verses, but in Kashmir, and there's no documentation in Vivekananda's about any of that, because there is no documentation of him staying in Swami Lakshmanjoo's parents' house. There's pictures of him on the houseboat. There's pictures of him with Swamiji, with a group of people around him. Swamiji's father is standing in the background. But Swami Ram told Swami Vivekananda, he said, you have to go to Kirbhavani, this shrine of the Devi, and your depression will be off. He knew that he was depressed, and he was. Why was he depressed? Because he had gotten so much negative publicity after the convention in Chicago. The convention on universal religions, and what happened there was all of these very, very influential, aristocrats were so overwhelmed. And women who just fell in love with him immediately, and they joined his band. They wanted to follow him, and of course this freaked out these families that were these were the upper crustaceans, I call them, the upper echelons of American society. They freaked out, and immediately they just put this blanket thing. Oh no, this is a religion. This is nothing here, nothing here. And Vivekananda got depressed about that. But some of the people, I think one of the Rockefeller daughters followed Vivekananda. And, so people, he was so charismatic, but he was depressed by why this had happened. And Swami Ram said, you go to Kirbhavani, your depression will be off. This is documented in Swami Ram's ashram, which has gone on for, the last 100 years. And he went to Kirbhavani, and it was still in the state of ruin from the 500 years of Mughal destruction. The Mughals came in, and they basically just desecrated every temple, and they threw out all the books and everything of Kashmir Shaivism. They converted hundreds and hundreds of pundits to Islam. You still have Muslims in Kashmir that have pundit names, from 3 generations, 4 generations. But when he was there, he was walking around, and the temple was in ruin, and he thought to himself, I have enough influence, and these Kashmiris just finding its feet. I could actually get this place completely fixed up. It has a divine feeling. And suddenly Mother Divine spoke to him and said, who are you? She said, I could build a 7-story gold temple here right now, in an instant. And basically said to him, you go on with your work, Probably also said, don't be depressed, be a good boy, That's the way Mother Divine really talks to her sincere children. And for Vivekananda, that was his first, he said, Shakti is alive. That was his real first taste of Shakti. The voice was a feminine voice. And from there, the rest is history. He went to Amarnath Cave. He was directed to go there. I don't know whether by Swami Ram, but he was, every yogi wanted to go to Amarnath. And when he entered the cave, he went for 3 days. I think he was in, you would know more about that than I do, especially Vivekananda will know the whole story of that. And after that, and I think Ramakrishna predicted that he would leave his body shortly after he has this divine experience. And I think it was 3 months later that Vivekananda, at a young age, left his body. So that this idea. I even lost the plot of where we started out on this little journey. But
well,
I think it was about opening the heart. And that's that.
You said that there were 2 types of devotees. That there were the people who are devoted to their idea of devotion, and
Yes.
What's the other kind?
The other kind is the devotee who he he never reinterprets. His intellect is pretty much gone. And if the guru or he gets an instruction from above to do something, there's no question. There's nothing in between. Or if I could do it this way, it would be better. They just do what the instruction comes from within or from whoever they've selected as their guru. You know, that's the devotee who is completely sold out on the level of the heart and has really put their own individuality aside. And those devotees usually, they get some kind of grace that happens in a very intense way. You know, there were a few devotees around Swamiji who got that. There was one man for many years, all he did was he collected the shoes. When there was a big function here, a temple puja, he came out with his little sticks and he put up these sticks and he had all these numbers and everything, and he just collected shoes. Hold on, I'm gonna.
Sir, name, number, which.
No, just he has to take this one, Bashir, to Nishat police station.
Yes.
Just give it to the police station. This one, Nishat, to FRO office, to Manzoor. FRO, bus. Okay.
Shiva Swatantriya.
Yes. So, yeah, I think everybody sees people like that. There are some people that are just devoted without any rhyme reason. They're just devoted. And those are the people that you find, in Swamiji's ashram, those are the people that you would find would be sweeping up and just, they would see some dirt on the ground. They would just automatically start organizing things. No chore was too big or too small. And the guy who used to do all the shoes, he was amazing. I always marveled at him. Even when there was a function, he would not go to the function. He'd stand there all day giving people numbers, collecting their shoes and putting them on the ground. And he did that for years and years. And one day his family came and they said, Swamiji, our father, he didn't go to work. He didn't come home. He was well off. He had a government job. His family were all settled. His kids were grown up. And they said he didn't come home. And then we would call the office. He didn't even go to the office. And Swamiji sat for a moment. I was there. He said, it's okay. He'll come again. Don't be worried. He'll come back. And 3 weeks or a month later, he turned up. And he was just radiant. His face was just glowing. You couldn't look at him, you know. And he came to the ashram, and people were approaching him. He'd just walk away. He wouldn't talk to anybody. And he sat down. And when Swamiji came down, you could feel this incredible magnetism between the two. But they never conversed. They never said anything. And he never looked at Swamiji. He just sat there looking at the ground. And then he left. And the next week he came back again. And what had happened? He'd gone to this sacred forest called Sadhuganga, and he just meditated. His experience was so overwhelming, he couldn't be around people, and he was having Nimilana Samadhi, Unmilana Samadhi, it took him a month to stabilize it to be able to come back and just be around people. And I remember one time, and I didn't even know he spoke English. I used to hand him my shoes. He'd give me his numbers, you know, and he did it with devotion. Even when he knocked the pegs in the ground and got his ropes and everything he did, he would hand you your shoes like he was handing you flowers to go and do puja. It was just this amazing soul, you know. And the next week he came to the ashram. I was there. We were waiting for Swamiji to come downstairs, and he came up to me. He's only I'm taller than everybody, but he's a smaller person, about this height. And he just hugged me in a bear hug. And he looked up into my eyes, and I looked down, and his eyes were like just these infinite pools. And he said, George, he said, hold Swamiji's feet. That's all. No practice, nothing. Just hold onto his feet and don't let go. And then everybody was looking. It was a bit of a scene, and he completely sort of let go, and he just sort of slunk away to a corner and sat by himself. And everybody knew then to leave him alone. And when Swamiji came down, it was just this divine rapture between the two of them. It was just only the two of them were there in the ashram. There were 100 people there that day, but I felt there were only he and Swamiji. There was the only two people in the ashram. And he left, And shortly after that, the bliss was too much, and he set his family up completely, and he left his body. No disease, no illness, no nothing. He just wanted to merge in God consciousness, and that meant his prarabdha karma was finished. So he came from a family of really elevated people. His elder brother was also a yogi, so it wasn't unusual that he had that experience. But his total practice was looking after everybody's shoes, the lowliest job you could do. And he was a Brahmin, he was a Kashmiri Brahmin. But it wasn't, I'd say that's what I mean by the person who has devotion of the heart and has no intellectual, reservation. Online, after, yeah. Bilkul. Mubarak. Yibi, niche wala ye covered, demolish? Niche, no, niche wala room? Acha, 100 minutes. Raina Saab, we'll talk. Acha, okay. Koi baat nahi. Yes. Gerbaji. Bilkul tea. Sorry, that's the carpenter who's
it sounds like Shiva's his expansive nature is pouring into your room now. And
it gets busy. Vijay Da, who Usha knows, Marlene and Vijay, he has just given us he bought Swamiji's old ashram, which Swamiji was in from 1930s up to 1960. And he's just given it to the ashram, and it's been not lived in for nearly 20 or 30 years. This is the carpenter who has done so many jobs around the ashram. I've worked with him for nearly more than 35 years, and he's a Muslim from a local village, totally devoted to Swamiji. So I guess that was the answer to the questions of the heart, And this man too, when he was building, we were doing a building project in the ashram, and every year Swamiji had this beautiful pear tree, and every year at a certain point I had to collect the pears before they got too ripe, wrap them in paper and put them in a box, and they would ripen in the box naturally. And this one year I was doing it, and he said, leave those 2 pears. And my limited intellect thought, oh, the birds are going to get them. So if I was devoted to the heart, I just would have left them and not thought anything. But I thought, oh gosh, Swamiji. And he said, no, leave those 2 pears on the tree. And they stayed there for the next 2 weeks and ripened, but not one bird went and pecked them or touched them. They was just super ripe, juicy, ready to eat. And one day the carpenter, we were doing this job, and Swamiji called me. He said, what's wrong with Asadullah? His name's Asadullah. I said, I don't know, but he's been in a strange mood all day. And Swamiji said, call him. I want to talk to him. So he came over to Swamiji and he explained something to Swamiji. It was all in Kashmiri. I didn't understand. And then Swamiji told me, George, pick those 2 pears, put them in a bag and give them to Asadullah. So I picked the 2 pears, I put them in a bag, I gave them to Asadullah. And when I did, Asadullah went, no. What I made out was she can't eat anything. She can't eat anything. Fruit is out of the question. Swamiji just nodded and said, give her the pears. So he went off. And what happened was his wife was diagnosed with severe stomach cancer. And the doctors had given her just months or weeks to live. And it was sudden, because here in Kashmir people don't go to doctors until the last minute. And Swamiji kept the pears on the tree. So he came back, and she just gradually improved. And I sort of didn't get the full story. And then a week later, when she had to go back for the tests, she had absolutely no stomach cancer at all. It was completely gone. And she's still alive today. That was 1987, 88, and she's still alive. So, that's beyond my comprehension, but and I witnessed many, many events like that, from the, mundane to, to the completely divine. And Swamiji always remained hidden in those things. When Asadullah came and said, Swamiji, like for a Muslim to bow to a Hindu is a big thing. And Swamiji would stop people from doing it. He would say, no, don't do that, don't do that. And he would say, but, and then he would say, no, I just prayed to Allah and Allah did this. Allah cured your wife. Or if to a Hindu, he'd say, I prayed to Shiva and Shiva did it. I just was the messenger for that, for your condition. He would never, ever attribute any of those events to himself. And so, yeah, we were on that thing. Is that a clear distinction, though, between people? A lot of myself included, I'm devoted to my idea of devotion. I still have this remnants that if I do this, it'll be good for me. But I learned pretty quickly to surrender. When Swamiji would tell me to do something, I would do it the way he said. In the beginning, I would do it the way I thought I should do it, because I'm an engineer, and he would tell me, go and do this, just fix that thing. And I'd go there, and he'd tell me, do it, just use this and do that. And I'd be there thinking, God, if only I had power tools, if only I had this, and I'd think a better way to do it. And Swamiji would come after an hour, he says, haven't you fixed that yet? And I said, well, I'm trying. He said, no, did you do it the way I told you? I said, well, he said, just while I'm here, just do what I told you. And I grabbed this old screwdriver and it would just get fixed in a matter of minutes. And that was the thing of putting my intellect aside for all the ways that the knowledge that I had, and just going with the flow, going with the instruction. So that's what I mean by that kind of devotion. And it comes, it develops, it grows. And the intellectual devotion is also okay. People that are devoted to study, because that's what gives them rasa, that's what gives them solace in their heart to have a greater understanding of this whole system that I'm in, going into the nitty gritty, the 36 tattvas. I mean, what could be more, thing than trying to understand 36 tattvas? And Swamiji would say, don't think that you're studying 36 tattvas. Think that you're studying yourself and how you function in the world, because you're made of the 36 tattvas. So don't think this is a separate discipline where you're studying, even Sanskrit. Don't think that you're just studying a language. When you're studying Sanskrit, you're actually studying the essence of your own speech and your own nature, your parapashanti, madhyama, and vaikari levels of speech.
Quite profound, overwhelming, your presentation today. Thank you very much for joining. I think it's now 8:30 here. Usually these are aimed at ending. So, and I thought you have your you look like you have a lot of people requiring your attention today.
Yeah, it keeps happening. I get less meditation. It's funny. I'm in the ashram. I get less meditation done here, and I get a lot of work done. But that was my job around Swamiji. When he asked me to come to the ashram and could I come and do some work? Well, he asked me to come to the ashram the second week I was there, which was a privilege to be asked to come, except on the public day. And I thought, oh, great, I'm coming. He's asked me to come there. I'll be enlightened in a week, And I sat before him, and he asked me all these questions, of which I knew he knew the answers.
Come for 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Ye be 10 minutes ready. Banaya. So he went through this whole thing, and he said, and as soon as I said I was a civil engineer, he said, oh, so do you know hands-on work? I said, yes. He said, oh, look, he leaned over and said, I have an old cow shed there that I want to demolish. I've just gotten rid of my cows, and I want to build a havan shala there. I want to build a yagya shala. Could you do that? And I said, yeah, I could. He said, oh, I'd have to provide you with tea and lunch. Is that okay? I said, so I did the Milarepa thing for 8 years. And in that, demolishing and building and painting and everything like that. And I had time to attend the lectures, but as soon as the lecture was finished, he would say, don't you have work to do? And I'd be racing off to do something. And for me, that was my sadhana. That was my, you know, I think I had the wrong notion of why I was there. I wanted knowledge for power. I wanted to know much more, but it was the wrong notion. And when I finally gave up, and I was just so happy to do all this work, then Swamiji said, now I want you to transcribe all of my teachings, you know, because I had a little bit of a background in Sanskrit. So I spent, after Swamiji left this world, I spent 20 years transcribing over 750 hours of English lectures, you know, and lectures from Sanskrit texts into English. I didn't do any Sanskrit translation. Swamiji did all that. I just typed out. I was a glorified typist who knew a little bit of how to read Devanagari and Roman, and that was the time I got to learn. You know. But up to that, I had to do all the menial chores, sweeping the dust and doing that, which for me was very blissful. And I'm doing it again.
Are these works that you have transcribed available to the public?
Yes, they are. Swami Bhajanananda, we have a website. My wife, Claudia, who's in the US right now, we have a website with, it's called Lakshmanjoo Academy, and all of those, we've published about 11 books so far. We switched from edited books to the actual original transcriptions in 2002, because we felt, when I was going through them, I was thinking, gosh, listening to these original lectures in Swamiji's own voice really makes all the difference. It's like it puts the person there throughout the 70s and 80s. And I talked with John Hughes, and I said, you know, we should stop editing Swamiji's work and just release the original transcriptions, sell the books, give the audios for free as a free download, so people can follow along and they can hear and read exactly what was said, all the questions that come in. It's not an easy subject, I will warn you. Kashmir Shaivism is very deep intellectual understanding, but Swamiji kept saying that it's an understanding of your own nature. So at every point there are these aha moments, like this makes sense. It makes sense because it's our own story, you know. And as I say, Kali plays a very important role, especially in this last book that we just released, which is the fourth Anika of Tantra Loka. There's a whole section on Kashmir Shaivism and the 12 Kalis. You know, Kalis and Karshini Kali is not only just one Kali, but she manifests herself in 12 ways which make up time. That's how time functions in our world, through the grace of Ma dividing herself up into our four different levels of perception, and 4 different levels of action, and 4 different levels of our own understanding of our own being. And you get 12, but they're all wrapped in the one Kali who's there in Laguna Beach dancing on Sadashiva. So I'll finish with one thing. I want to finish with one thing, because that someone asked the question and said, why is Ma dancing on Shiva? Is he dead? She said, he's not dead. Look at his face. He's enjoying the bliss of the touch of her feet. And then she said, but she's very fearful. She has this huge sword with blood dripping from it. What should we do about that? Swamiji said, if Ma ever comes in your meditation and you see she has the sword and she wants to cut your head, he said, you should do one thing. He said, you should put your head down like that and show her your neck, so she can just sever your head in one swoop. And the bliss that will come from that, you can't imagine. And he said, that will be Ma's grace. That will be Ma's grace to you. And if you're devoted to Ma, she'll do it. If you're really sincerely devoted, she'll come and she'll guide you at every step. And you know, this is her play. So Jai Ma.
Jai Ma, Jai Ma, whatever. So thank you, George G. And this has been a wonderful immersion, not only into the profound worldview and of Kashmir Shaivism, but also into the one of our, over the 30 years we've known you, our favorite thing is that no matter what you're talking about, your example always be some story of some Lakshmanjoo. He's like the living. Of course, we say, oh, he's the living master, last living master, the recent living master of Kashmir Shaivism, a great saint, a great scholar. But he's like, he is the proof of Kashmir Shaivism. He's the example. He's like the lived tattva, the lived experience. You know. So to me, the stories are, I can't say more important, but for me, they're more important than even the philosophy, right? And I think Usha, like Usha, you know, she tells stories of Lakshmanjoo. That's our understanding of Kashmir Shaivism is stories of Swami Lakshmanjoo. Really
Yes.
quite amazing. Of course, so we've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours probably just listening to your stories of Swami Lakshmanjoo and other great saints. So George has been blessed by having met some of the great saints of this this era, right? And it's full of, maybe one day we can grab him again and he can tell, maybe there'll be a nice thing of storytelling with George on the lives of saints, Swami and other saints like that, because I think that's also really helpful. Because, you know, one of the things we talk about our seminary, our sub-theme is that we're applied theology, right? So it's not just theological research and study and academic understanding and the philosophy, but it's like of course, how to apply it to our life, but it's lived, it's real. This is life, not just ideas. This is the real life. And so the lives of the saints is I think the most juicy part of it, the proof of the whole thing.
The proof of the whole thing, yeah. But you know, I feel doubly blessed to have been fortunate enough for my karmas to spend so much time with Swami Lakshmanjoo, and he's very much still alive, and he was the last link in an unbroken oral tradition. So, and during his lifetime, he had darshan of all of the great saints of the past, especially Abhinavagupta. The last darshan he had of Abhinavagupta, the saint who died, you know, left this world, we can say more than 1,000 years ago, was 1985. You know, and he admitted, he said, Abhinavagupta came to me and gave me some very important verses for you to recite, and that was just you know, part and parcel of his life and his nature.
Incredible. All right, George. Jaimo, thank you. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yes,
By Lord Shiva's grace.
Yes, and I think I have a harmonium ready, and I have a drum. Okay. I'll try to procure a guitar so we can.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yes.
That would be like really old times.
Like old times, exactly. And
I know. I even know the songs we need to sing. We've done this so many times. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Shiva Mahadev. But how can we not do that? You know.
Excellent. I'm excited.
Very excited.
God bless everybody, and make Ma's grace continue to shine upon all of you.
Amen. So thank you all the students for their kind attention, and this will be our last class through July. We'll be back end of July, and we'll see Swami Chaitananda will be here. So how to arrange? He'll be speaking during most of the summer, so we'll see how we'll fit ourselves into around his satsang. He'll be speaking on Saturdays, usually a Saturday night, so we'll post those also. So okay, very wonderful. Jai Ma, Hara Hara Mahadev, Sri Guru Maharaji ki jai, Mahamai ki jai, Swami Lakshmanjoo ki jai.
Hara 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 Mahadev.
Mahadev.
Bye, Ma.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oops, sorry.
The recording has stopped.
Sorry.
Swamiji, I hope you'll be like the pundits that George was talking about and do some pujas and yagas on our behalf.
We shall do exactly that.
Thank you.
Jai Ma, Hari Om.
Jai Ma.
Jai Ma, Hari Om.
So I think George, if I gave you power, you'll have to end the meeting, I think, on your side.
I can do that. Yeah, I can
Jai
do
Ma.
that. I think it's a matter of ending.